This land is your land. This land is our land. From California to the New York Island. From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and we. Yes! This land is your land. This land is our land. From California to the New York Island. From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, my friends, neighbors, dignitaries, and kin. A great afternoon to all of us gathered here on this sacred ground. I stand before you, Rose Weaver, a vessel of songs and stories, a voice echoing through time, carrying forth messages of freedom and peace, as we surely did wade through the water. Wade through the water, children. Wade through the water, 'cause God's gonna trouble the waters. And here we are, not by accident, but by intention, drawn by the currents of history to this very spot here in Bristol, Rhode Island. This place, so beautiful, so serene, yet it holds within its very soil the echoes of a past that demands our attention. It demands our remembrance, our healing, and peace as we lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. And what does the voice of me, Rose Weaver, bring to this sacred circle? Oh, I bring the whispers of our ancestors, carried on the ocean breeze, the resilience etched in every line of their journey. I bring the vibrant hues of untold narratives, painting a tapestry of struggle and triumph. Yes, my voice is like a resonant drum, beats with the rhythm of forgotten songs, awakening the spirit of justice and harmony. As we rise up, we'll rise like the day. We'll rise up. We'll rise unafraid. We'll rise up and do it 1,000 times again. Yes, we'll rise up high like the waves. We'll rise up in spite of the ache. We'll rise up and we'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, and you. For you, I bring the gentle touch of understanding, weaving threads of empathy between hearts, bridging divides with the golden light of compassion. I am a keeper of the flame, igniting hope in the shadows, of a beacon guiding us towards a future where peace reigns supreme and freedom's song echoes eternally through these hallowed halls. Wade in the water. Why don't you sing a verse with me, a chorus? Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. One more. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Yes, Dr. Martin Luther King said, like the ever-flowing water of a river, life has its moments of drought and its moments of flood. Like the ever-changing cycle of seasons, life has the soothing warmth of the summers and the piercing chill of the winters. But through it all, God walks with us. Never forget that God is able to lift us from the fatigue of despair to the buoyancy of hope and transform dark and desolate valleys into sunlit paths of inner peace. Dr. King said, "Let us break bread together on our knees. Let us break bread together on our knees. When I fall on my knees with my face to the rising sun, oh Lord, have mercy on we." He also said the time is always right to do right. So we are here, not by accident, but by intent. I woke up this morning with my mind laid on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. So as we come together now, let us remember we are bound not just by this moment, but by the common threads of our shared humanity and by our breath. Ooh, we breathe the same air. We bleed the same red blood. In this circle of fellowship, there is no difference too great, no shadow too dark to overcome. If we imagine there's no heaven, it's easy if you try. No hell below us, above only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Ooh, imagine there's no countries. It's hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Someday I hope you'll join us and the world will live as one. Welcome to this sacred day, a symbol of healing, a promise that together we rise up above the wounds of history. We celebrate our strength and walk forward in unity, hand in hand, heart to heart. Here today and tomorrow, we are one. One voice, one spirit, one community. Let us link arms then, or hold hands then, to show that we will continue to overcome. We will continue to overcome. We will continue to overcome. And we shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Hallelujah and amen.
Quite a powerful beginning of our ceremony today. I would call Rose Weaver a genuine Rhode Island treasure. Accomplished actor, poet, playwright, and I think you sing too. But this is such a beautiful gathering here, so let me be the first among many going to say welcome. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for being here, being part of this very significant day as we see the creation of Spencer Evans and the efforts of the Bristol Middle Passage Port Marker Project. I am Stephan Brigidi. I'm one of the board members, part of the design team to get this particular thing done, and you will see the results very shortly. But it would be remiss of us if we didn't mention some that I call the unsung, unseen heroes, those that are responsible for the engineering effort, among other things, to get this foundation done. Peter Giorgetti is here, PAR Engineering. Thank you, Peter. And it was followed by Steve Bakios of East Coast Construction. I'm not sure if Steve is here. He's in the back. Thank you very much. And most of us Bristolians, latecomers or newcomers, or long-time Bristolians, we know very well Mike Dapont and the Dapont Landscaping Services, who did a great deal of work pouring the cement, laying the foundation. And the Hogan family of Warren Monument. I don't know if Ryan is here or any of the members of the family, but they laid the stone, they put the smaller pieces in, and made this right for the team from the Boccaccio Sculpture Services. And they worked in concert with our artist, Spencer Evans, every step of the way. So these are the people that we don't see because it's somewhat subterranean work. But I'm here today to introduce you to a series of peoples, but starting with our president, Bernard Freamon. A little bit about Bernard. He came here 3 years ago. I was one of his first friends, I'm proud to say, and I knew he was going to be an important member of our community. As he settled into Roger Williams Law School, he is the teacher there, and his proper title is the Director of the Study of Law and Racial Equity. And if I got it wrong, it's something like that, believe me. But he began his career working with the ACLU. He has always represented underrepresented populations, the homeless, the poor, those who had been disenfranchised. He's been a very active litigator on occasion, and he still continues to work with various clients. But he left the hustle-bustle metropolises of New Jersey, New York, to settle into our quaint little town here. So it's taken a little while, but he has settled in, and we claim you as one of our own. And Bernard has been the leader of the Bristol Middle Passage since our formal inception, which was just 3 years ago. He's been a fair leader, a good leader, occasionally a very strict one. He's challenged us to debate, to produce, and make the best out of our small board of 12 members. All of us very, very active in this. He has guided us through a very arduous process. There are other people here that Bernard will make mention of that have helped us along the way. Some of our council people. I see Tony Texera and Tim Sweeney, and there are others. Aaron Lay, perhaps, Nathan Coloro, and Mary Perella. They were very instrumental in granting us this very important place by the water. But you need to hear from Bernard himself. So I'm going to ask you to come on up. I have the distinct pleasure to introduce to all of you Professor Dr. Bernard Freamon.
Thank you very much. Stephan, it's an honor and a privilege for me to act today as MC of this very august gathering, and I trust the same will be true for you when we are done. One of the things about being an MC is that you have to be kind of strict, as he said, and so I brought this hammer when we're going to have a number of speakers, and in your little booklet, if you've gotten it, there is a program, and we're going to follow that order after I introduce some of the dignitaries that we have here for today. And if you see me come up on the side here with the hammer in my hand, that's a message to the speaker that their time is up, because we want to be able to have about an hour and a half program, and then afterward we'll have a public reception here. In the back we have cookies and water and other soft drinks and things for you to meet and mingle with each other. We're also going to have at the end of the program a series of photo ops here once the sculpture, which we're very proud of, is unveiled. There will be a number of people who will want to take photos with the sculpture in the background. We want to start with the board, and then other important dignitaries who are here. And then we'll have to have, we have one board member, Charles Edwards, who will probably supervise that. And all of you will have an opportunity to take photos with the sculpture. But an important thing to know is that this sculpture is now here for 100 years at least. So if 100 years at very least. So if you don't get a chance to take a photo with your favorite person, don't worry, you can come back tomorrow or the next day, any fair day, and you'll be able to do that. So the first thing I want to do is to have all the members of the Bristol Middle Passage Port Marker Project, the Board of Trustees, Board of Directors that we have, if we could all have them either stand up or wave. There are 12 of us. In some religions, 12 is an important number, but we did not choose that number. But these people that you see standing up and waving, we sacrificed, fought, argued with each other, supervised each other to some extent, supervised the engineers, and they are well-deserved. The congratulations that all of you are going to give to us today are well-deserved. We also have Senator Jack Reed with us today, who will be talking and giving some talk. And next to him is Congressman Gabe Amo, who will also give a keynote talk today. And then we have a number of people I want to recognize who are here, who will not talk, but are important and have given us support and guidance along the way. Starting with Katrina Brown. She is producer and director. There was a film made called Traces of the Trade many years ago, and it was that film which really was the catalyst for this project. And Katrina Brown was a producer and director of that film. It's a documentary film about the DeWolf family's journey of discovery and their family's roots and deep involvement in the slave trade. What we're going to, some of you already know, but we're going to talk to some extent today about Bristol's involvement in the slave trade. And we're going to recognize and memorialize that today, but also use it as a jumping off point for the other side of the slave trade, which is abolition. And when we get done today, we're going to make sure that all of you can call yourself an abolitionist, a person who is against those kinds of things that the slave trade had represented. This is not a ceremony to make people feel guilty or bad or sorry about what happened. What happened is what happened. We are here to recognize it and to move forward with a positive effort in terms of what's happened. In addition to Katrina Brown, we also have Charles Roberts, who is sitting here in front. He's the founder of the Rhode Island Slave History Medallion organization, whose mission is to highlight and make known significant sites related to slave activity through Rhode Island. We have at least one judge here today, I'll be right with you, Judge Tresvant. Is he here? He's a judge of the District Court of Rhode Island. And I want to make sure, are there any other judges here in the group that I don't know, because I'm a newcomer to Rhode Island? I have some students who are judges, but the one judge I thought she would come, she had to cancel. Any other judges? I want to make sure we don't miss any judges. As a lawyer, that's important. Okay. And then we have Keith Stokes, who is a Rhode Island historian laureate and member of the 1696 Heritage Project and Black Heritage Society. Keith Stokes is here somewhere in the audience. We also have Ray Rickman, who is ex-director of the Stages of Freedom. As I understand it, runs a bookstore in Providence on the African-American history in Rhode Island, and teaches children to learn swimming and does other cultural programs for children. We want to especially recognize the members of the town council, the Bristol Town Council, who voted twice, at least twice, to sponsor this project. First, to set aside the land, and we presented to them a design, and then we had a competition. And after the competition, 3 sculptors made the finals, and then Spencer Evans won the competition, and you'll see why when we unveil the sculpture. And then he presented the project to the town council, and then the town council, the first time we presented, we had 1 abstention. The second time we presented, it was unanimous, largely because of Mr. Evans, Professor Evans's presentation. So those town council members are Nathan Kaluro, Mary Perella, Tim Sweeney, Tony Texera, and Aaron Lay. And they deserve a big round of applause, because without the town council, we could not have accomplished it. We also have some town administrators and officials who are with us: Steve Contente, the town clerk, Melissa Cordero, and the head of Parks and Recreation, Warren Renshausen. So a round of applause for them as well. Okay. I've been asked to recognize also Jody Andrade, who is head of a foundation that was our first grant. And we started everything off. When we started this project, we had zero money, zero support. And the board members, some of whom are no longer on the board, but they're recognized in your program, we stuck with it. We were really focused on what we wanted to do, and you'll see at the end of the program today that it was a very good result. We have several state legislators, if they're here, we expected them: Susan Donovan, June Speakman, Linda Ujufusa, and Pam Loria. They gave us support during this project. Senator, what's his name? Senator Theide, is he there? State Senator. Is he here? Right there? Very good. Are there any other public officials who want to be recognized who were support? I don't want to. I'm a newcomer to Rhode Island, so I don't know people by face. So Susan Donovan, I mentioned her name. Is she here? Susan Donovan? Okay, very good. All right, very good. So remember, at the end of the program, there will be an organized photo op. We will start with the board. The board will do the first photo op, and we'll have an official photo, and then after that, there will be opportunities for others to have a photo op in front of the sculpture. The Secretary of State, Greg Amo, he should have recognized, told me he was here. Greg Amo is here, Secretary of State. Rumor has it, he might soon be governor. So, I hope I didn't embarrass you, Mr. Secretary. All right. Any other public officials? Want to make sure. All right, so now we'll start our program. And the first thing, there are two figures that you will see in this sculpture. One is an African, and the other is a Native American, specifically a woman who posed for the sculpture. Sculpture is from the Pokanoket Nation. And the Pokanoket Nation occupied this area, and so the sculpture recognizes that. They were also enslaved or sometimes massacred and sent to the Caribbean and to Cuba to work. And so they have suffered as a result, and there's great impact of the slave trade on that group. From the beginning, in pursuit of the memorial sculpture, our strongest partners have been the Pokanoket tribe. Sachem Tracey Dancing Star and her father, Sagamore Winds of Thunder, William, are with us today, and they have been with us all along. Particularly at this site, more than 2 years ago, when we staked our claim with posting a temporary sign here in the park. Today they are with us again as we solidify and mark Bristol's history together in honoring our African ancestors and those of the Pokanoket people who were harmed by what was called King Philip's War more than 400 years ago at Mount Hope here in our town. Remarkably, the lands they lost, at least a portion of them, have now been returned to its rightful owners, and once again, they became the rightful stewards of the lands and waters of the Pokanoket country. We are proud to stand with our partners, the Pokanoket Nation, and ask them to make their own offerings on this important day. Please join me in welcoming Sachem and Sagamore, Tracey Dancing Star, and William, I would ask them to come to the stage. Thank you.
Tabatni. Wani kisak. Wani payak uk Pokanoket. Akiak. Natai humanak. Akiak. Wuchi. Muchi ki nanipas. Hatak. Welcome to the ancestral and traditional homelands of the Pokanoket tribe. Our ancestors have been on this land for more than 10,000 years before colonization. And the Creator put our people on this land to care for it and to live in peace, balance, and harmony with it and everything on it. And I would like to acknowledge my ancestors who did just that. And I would also like to acknowledge the Pokanoket people today who are still trying to restore balance back to these lands and waterways. Aho.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here today as we gather not so much to commemorate, but to acknowledge an often overlooked and painful part of our shared history. For to live in a free society means that truth is not suppressed but spoken openly. By acknowledging the past, however tragic, we gain the wisdom to reflect, to learn, and to guide ourselves through the turbulence of today's storms. The name of the state was once Rhode Island and Providence Plantation. It is a fitting name for those who wish to recognize the real origins of this country. Not the comforting myths, but the hard truths which are so often omitted. For the 17th century marked the beginning of one of the largest and most tragic human trafficking operations in history. Millions of people were enslaved crossing the Atlantic, not as free men and women, but as property. And these actions not only shackled Africans in chains, but also ensnared the hearts of those who profited from their suffering, making them prisoners of greed, blind to the very morals and liberties that Roger Williams envisioned when he sought to establish a colony in these lands. But these colonists did not come to vacant shores. The indigenous people had lived on this land for over a millennium, and they were far from few in number. Indeed, it had not been for the devastation of epidemic disease, the European settlers might have been overwhelmed by the surrounding indigenous nations and disappeared like the lost colony of Roanoke. Yet, when most people imagined the encounters between the Europeans and the indigenous nations of New England, they think of romanticized images of Thanksgiving. Slavery is not the first topic that comes to mind. Few realize that indigenous slavery predates African slavery in these lands. For at least a century before the Pilgrims' arrival, opportunistic European sailors preyed upon the indigenous people here. In 1614, Captain Thomas Hunt kidnapped dozens of indigenous men from these shores, including the man history remembers as Sculptor, one of the most infamous examples of such cruelty. These acts made our people understandably suspicious and often hostile toward Europeans. Had the Pokanokets, yes, Pokanokets, for there were no Wampanoag before the English came, under the leadership of Massasoit Osamequin, and not forged a defensive alliance with the Pilgrims, Plymouth Colony would not have survived. A generation later, Osamequin's sons saw that the English settlers were no longer few in number. They no longer sought brotherhood but dominance. one son, Massasoit Metacomet, whom you call King Philip, rose to resist. He sought to defend the sovereignty not only of the Pokanoket, but of all the indigenous nations of New England. Outgunned, outnumbered, and betrayed, Metacomet fell, and his people, the Pokanoket, drank deeply from the colonists' cup of vengeance. They were subjected to what the Romans call denamato memoria, a deliberate attempt to erase their very name from history as a warning to the surviving indigenous people. Those who did not escape to the protection of other tribes faced either death or enslavement. In the wake of the King Philip War, New England practiced wholesale indigenous slavery of the Pokanoket, Narragansett, and Nipmuc, and other indigenous people deemed threats to the colonies. And many of our people were sold abroad in the expanding Atlantic slave trade. The Barbados Act of 1675 was even passed out of fear that enslaved Africans and the indigenous captives from the King Philip conflict might unite in rebellion. Others remained here as indentured servants who, like the enslaved Africans that toiled beside them, were dehumanized, stripped of their culture, and forced to assimilate into a society that never saw them as equals in dignity, virtue, or liberty. And yet we endured, we resisted, for resistance takes many forms, from breaking tools, running away, preserving stories, to passing down ancestral knowledge in whispers from one generation to the next. Even Metacon's own son was sold into slavery in Bermuda, destined for a short, harsh life under the burning Caribbean sun. Yet he survived. He carried forward his people's name, passing it down to Simeon Simons and Susan Simons, his granddaughter, who was married to George Frederick Whedon, to Otis Whedon, my grandfather, and Esther Whedon, my mother, who was married to Clifford Warren Guy, who was another Pokanoket, in time to me. I stand before you as a descendant of that boy history tried to forget, but he resisted because he survived. I still know who I am. My descendants know who they are, and I am here, proud to stand here today and say, I am Pokanoket. Autash! Stand firm. Slavery. Slavery in any form or time can never be justified. It violates the fundamental truth that freedom is natural, is the natural condition of the human spirit. And so as we look upon the statue, let us not see only a victim to be pitied, but a symbol of resilience. Both indigenous and African people resisted their oppression and carved out a place for their descendants in this land. They were not silent. Their memory lives in our blood. Their spirit is in our breath. Many of us stand here today because they did not yield, but endured. Their spirits remain free. Their descendants remain free. And it is freedom that we honor and celebrate today. Thank you. Aruta! Stand firm.
This is indeed a celebration today. And whenever we have a celebration or anything of importance, we, as a people, we honor the Creator. We give thanks to the Creator. We honor our ancestors. And we don't care how long it takes, but I understand we are under a timeline here. I'm looking at this hammer. So what we're going to do is our drum, the heartbeat, they're going to sing one song, and it is a memorial to those who have crossed over before us. So we're going to sing that song, but then a little later, we're going to sing a couple of more songs because we just have to deliver ourselves in a good way to the Creator and to our ancestors. So afterwards, we're going to sing a couple of more songs of thanks, a couple of honor songs. And while we do that, please get up and walk around. You do not have to remain seated while we do that. And then after we're done with that, we'll sing some songs for our enjoyment, everyone's enjoyment. So, drum, please.
Thank you very much, Sachem, Tracey, Dancing Star Brown, Sagamore, Winds of Thunder, William Guy, and our music troupe, and you'll hear more from them later in our program. Our next speaker is Mrs. Victoria Johnson. She is a native of Newport and has served as coach, teacher, and principal in public schools for over 41 years. She holds a master's degree in administration and education with a background in health, physical education, and recreation. She has been dedicated to providing students with knowledge and skills that would result in productive citizenship and a lifelong of learning. As a retiree, she's been co-founder of the Newport Middle Passage Port Marker Project, which is similar to our project. She has been a significant advisor to us at Bristol Middle Passage, inspiring us with determination and perseverance every step of the way. Her example cannot be understated. So without further ado, I welcome Mrs. Johnson.
Take that thing with you. Good afternoon to all of you. I am so excited. You just You just cannot understand or realize it. And I am bringing greetings from the Newport Middle Passage Port Markers. And congratulations. Congratulations to the Bristol Middle Passage. Congratulations to Bristol, the city Bristol. And I give you credit and honors to this entire community. Congratulations, Bristol Middle Passage Port Marker Project. Now, that's short for me. And that's short for me because I received a statement that Ann Chin wanted me to read to all of you today. And Ann Chin is the founder of 90 Sites along with an organization called UNESCO. UNESCO, Site of Memory. And she's in charge of all of the sites with Middle Passage. Now you say, UNESCO, what is that? UNESCO is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Now, what do they focus on? They focus on international cooperation for peace. They focus on cultural heritage, quality education, and scientific education. And in her statement, Anne gives me some information in relationship to UNESCO. And Newport, Warren, and Bristol are all sites now of UNESCO. We have been recognized. So this is what Anne has asked me to say to you. The Middle Passage Ceremonies and Port Markers Project commends the city of Bristol and its Middle Passage Committee for the installation of this memorial, the enslaved people, both African and indigenous, who created the wealth and stability that we see today. Our association with Bristol began in 2013 as a side trip from Providence, where we received our first grants to recognize and research the United States Middle Passage history. The journey with Bristol has been long, bit bumpy, but ultimately successful. And Bristol joins 90 other documented Middle Passage arrival locations in the United States and its territories. Each one is unique. However, this year, 2023, 3 locations will stand out as true, distinct markers and are installed prior to the nation observing its 250th year of independence from Britain. The first one, in April, Darien, Georgia, placed a marker at its waterfront to acknowledge the first shipment of Captain Africans to North American mainland, and the year was 1526. In November, a marker will also be installed in Afritown, Mobile, Alabama, to honor the last documented group of Africans to arrive and be enslaved in the United States. And today, this memorial commemorates the location with the largest involvement in transporting Captain Africans to the Americas. To enable this Middle Passage history to be publicly shared as part of national truth-telling is significant. It's significant that we address these facts before 2026. It's even more important because it emphasizes the presence and contributions of Africans, indigenous people, and their descendants in the making of this country. Their knowledge, their talent, their skill sets, and culture are imparted in this place and its people more even than the flags in the front yards and that wonderful red, white, and blue lane dividers on the streets of Bristol. At this waterfront, a fuller and richer story is accessible and shared. The ancestors have waited for centuries to have the circle repaired and the healing begin. And I thank you with Aunt Chin. I'm going to take the hammer.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Johnson. Now, a little history, just a little bit before we introduce our next two speakers. They're coming up to the podium. James DeWolf of Rhode Island, who lived from 1764 to 1837, was a United States Senator and a wealthy merchant who at the time of his death was reported to be the second richest person in the United States. That wealth came from the slave trade, and he lived in Bristol, and it is said that over 1,000 of the slave ships that brought Africans to the North American continent were manufactured or put on the sea in Bristol. Over 50 years and 3 generations from then, James DeWolf and his family brought about 12,000 Africans across the Middle Passage, making DeWolf the most successful of the slave trading families in the United States. In a notorious incident on a ship called the Polly in 1789, DeWolf ordered an enslaved woman who was dying of smallpox thrown into the Atlantic Ocean. While there was an attempt later to prosecute him for that act, he was found not guilty. And that incident on the Polly was written and talked about for many years after that. Eventually, there was a documentary made called Traces of the Trade. And the two people I have standing to my left were instrumental in putting together that documentary, and they're in the documentary, but they are also descendants of James DeWolf. So we are very honored that they've been advisors to our board, and we're very honored to have them here to say a few words to you. And I'll start with, who wants to go first? Elizabeth? Okay. Elizabeth, Sturges, Llerena, and then after that, Holly Fulton. Elizabeth, here is the mic.
Good afternoon, bienvenidos. First, thank you to Ann Chin and Ann Cobbs, founders of the Middle Passage Ceremonies and Port Markers Project, for standing by me and us for 12 years. Abigail, John, Mark Anthony, Wallace, Rosalind, Philemon. These are my DeWolf family ancestors, but it is because of all the ancestors and the awesome work of this board under Professor Bernard Freeman's skillful leadership and our supporters from the beginning that I am here today. I have so much gratitude. Today is a dream come true. I went to Bristol Public Schools, worked here in Bristol, and was born here like my grandmother Rosalind. She would tell me stories about our ancestors, but I thought they were boring. So when she gave us all a book that mentioned enslavement in the family, I didn't read it. Thank God my cousin Katrina Brown, who is here today, did, and called me in 1997 to tell me that our DeWolf family enslaved more Africans than any other family in U.S. history. She invited me then to participate in the film Traces of the Trade. all those years in Bristol, and I never heard this anywhere. This being the Ma'afa, Great Calamity, the African Holocaust. Ma'afa is a word in Akan, the main indigenous Ghanaian language, that literally means the cry of women. The bishop, Johnny Ray Youngblood, founder of a now national movement of Ma'afa commemorations, who understands deeply the healing power of the arts, explained this to me years ago. I want to thank you, Bishop, because for all these years, especially when discussing racism was not yet popular among white folks, your support sustained and guided me to stand here today. In the winter of 1990, when I worked cleaning Linden Place, after the last of the DeWolfs had left, I found an old print in a closet of a tropical place. That is when I started to wonder, what happened here? But it wasn't until a few years ago, when I read Wendy Warren's book, New England Bound, that I learned about the huge numbers of indigenous people also enslaved here in so-called New England. In the beginning, I tried to tell myself that my family just did business. They didn't crack the whips. That didn't work. Then, like today, the elite in boardrooms negotiating deals that destroy lives are as violent as the working folk doing the dirty work in the fields with the bullwhips. So, finally, here today, we have Professor Evans' gorgeous sculpture, art, whose power to transform and heal is indisputable. Telling the truth is the first step towards repair and justice. I thank you for letting me speak today.
Hello, everyone. My voice might be wiggly, bear with me. I grew up here in Bristol in the summers from the mid-50s to 1974, and as you know, I am a descendant of the 3 generations of the DeWolf family who were so enormously involved in the business of human trading. I acknowledge and I give voice to and emphasize the needed processes of listening, learning, healing, and envisioning liberation not only as a descendant of my ancestors' business, but as a Euro-American woman. When I was a young girl, I was pretty proud of the DeWolf name. It appeared all over the place. I like that, particularly in all the stained glass windows at St. Michael's Church. I was not aware of my ancestors' business and the impact of that business in that youthful pride of mine. I learned about what they did at the age of 20, and about 25 years later, I began practicing what I call a constant learning, waking up, and healing journey. Part of starting that journey was participating in the film Traces of the Trade with Elizabeth and 8 other DeWolf descendants. Thank you, Katrina. The learning that takes place with this amazing statue is a reminder for all of us Euro-Americans of the vital need to honor Black and brown people in our country, to know more about their past, their present experiences, what they've gone through, what they continue to endure today, their resilience, and celebrate their enormous contributions for centuries. Thank you. I continue to really wonder why we Euro-Americans still do not listen, learn, and work on healing to the degree I think we should concerning this history. Why don't we examine tough questions like what should apology and reparations look like? Despite what Bernard said, I am going to make an apology right now. I am so very sorry that 3 generations of my ancestors did what they did to so many people no matter how long ago. The impact is felt today by so many. And I have huge, huge gratitude to the board of the Bristol Middle Passage Port Marker Project for the gargantuan amount of work that they have done for our project. That all of you are here, there's a lot of you, that you are here to honor and celebrate what this statue encompasses is a coming together of two worlds for me. One, my upbringing in this town, this beautiful town. And two, my learning and healing journey that I travel in here today. Inspired to continue that journey, I encourage others to be more willing to learn, to talk about challenging truths and tough questions, and to look at the foundations of this country for purposes of healing together. And when I say healing, I say it a lot. What do I mean? Racial healing, family healing, trauma healing. I could go on. Why do so many not want to do work that's about healing? What are so many avoiding? It's an important question. This is partly why I wanted to begin organizing the Bristol Middle Passage Port Marker Project with Elizabeth, my cousin here, 11 years ago, and the history and healing involves all of us. In partnership, in community, with sharing visions of liberation for each of us. What would that look like? A lot needs to happen before a goal like that is reached. But for now, please let us continue in the spirit of hope for expanded healing amongst and for all of us. And James Baldwin's words are really good right now, and boy, have I learned from him. Quote, "The greatest force of history comes from the fact that we carry it within us. We're unconsciously controlled by it, and history is literally present in all that we do." Thank you for coming today.
I've been asked by Professor Spencer Evans to recognize two people from RISD. Me being a RISD alum, it falls to me, but on behalf of the board of Bristol Middle Passage, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of President Crystal Williams and also Provost Toba Gadesi. Where are you? Where are you? Thank you for being here, and thank you for bringing Spencer Evans to Rhode Island.
All right, next we have two very honored guests. All of our guests are honored, but these two are very special to us. The next speaker will be Congressman Gabe Amo. He likes to make noise, and fortunately for us here in Rhode Island, he's making a lot of noise on our behalf in Washington, D.C., standing up for environment, science, and human rights. He is a freshman congressman working like the veteran of public service that he really is from his time here working with state government. Congressman Amo graduated from Moses Brown School in Providence. He later received a bachelor's degree in political science from Wheaton College, and he had a Marshall Scholarship to study at the University of Oxford in England. He is a native of Pawtucket. I've learned how to say that here. You say it Pawtucket. And he's the son of two parents from West Africa. The son of immigrants. His mother originally was from Liberia, and his father came from Ghana. He understands what it's like to grow up in a working class family, and his personal story is about hard work, resilience, grit, and determination. He will give one of our keynote speeches, and then he will introduce Senator Reid at the end of his talk. And so without further ado, I call Congressman Gabe Amo to the stand, to the podium.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor, and thank you for your leadership. And I want to start out by saying it is such a beautiful day out. And sometimes it is the most painful things that inspire us to see the beauty. And we are brought here through great amounts of pain. Pain from the indigenous people who are on this land, pain from people who crossed the Atlantic against their will, pain from the descendants of those who carry on the burden of that legacy. But that pain inspires great beauty, and I want to say thank you to all of the leaders of this project. I've known about this project the entirety of my 22 months in the United States House of Representatives. And every single time I get to think about it and dig deep on it, I am impressed and inspired by the courage of so many. Because this is a very easy project to say, well, you know, history is something that someone else can deal with. But it is far more courageous to engage, far more courageous to be proximate. And to the leaders on this board of directors, I say thank you. To all of the local elected officials who have to win over neighbors and speak boldly about the importance of this being right here, I say thank you. And so we are at a point where we celebrate so many things about this great state. We celebrate our trailblazing history promoting religious freedom. But at the same time, when you think about a concept like freedom, something that is aspirational, and you see it in our state's motto, hope, we know that hope is all that some had in moments and a lifetime of despair and enslavement, despair and displacement. But hope is all they had. And we all know the facts here, that Rhode Island ships transported more than 60% of enslaved Africans to the West Indies, Cuba, and the American South. And I think about just a few days ago, Senator Reid and I were in West Africa. We were in Liberia and Ghana. My ancestors from Ghana are from a village called Salaga, which was one of the largest slave gathering points in all of West Africa. A place where there are trees that are marked as these were the places where folks were gathered and rounded up around these trees. And I think about the legacy of the people who went on to found a country like Liberia, formerly enslaved people who went to bring the concept, that aspirational hope and optimism that they took from this land. And so the horrors of the enslavement of African and indigenous people, without a doubt, shaped the economic prosperity for the white residents of port towns like Bristol, like Newport. And even after Rhode Island banned slavery, the cotton picked by enslaved people in other states sustained the Industrial Revolution right here in the Blackstone Valley, in textile mills. So the pain continued to yield for few prosperity. It's full of paradox today, but it's why I started out with an acknowledgement of the beauty that exists right now. And that is in this space, under this tent, of people coming together and acknowledging the pain of the past, but the purpose of being present today for our future. And I recognize that this history touches everything. The cobblestones that we walk on the songs that we heard today, the voices who are pushing for us to rectify the wrongs of the past. And some people today, we know, want to whitewash our history, removing it from school curriculums, undoing programs that acknowledge the differences that brought us here today. And the list goes on. And in fact, and I don't want to make this a political speech, but I am who I am. The president of these United States, who lives in a house built by slaves, wants to remove references to history in the Smithsonian. You know, he said something to the effect of slavery wasn't all bad. And so that is why, out of so much pain, today's beauty is worth acknowledging. Because we have to keep fighting. And we are countering in this moment, through the work of great public art, a great public effort, we are countering that right here in Rhode Island. Standing tall on that mountaintop to say, we know where we've come from, and that has to shape where we are going. And so this is where I will come to a close, because I know we have a long program to get through. But I think often about our nation's motto, E pluribus unum, out of many one. You know, when they first put that forward, that was about the 13 different colonies, the differences that they each had. But I think it's particularly applicable right now. Out of many experiences, out of many challenges, out of many moments of triumph, we can, in fact, be one. We can acknowledge difference and be part of this experiment that advances everyone's opportunity. But we can't do that by erasing the past. We have to engage our history. We have to learn to face those challenges and push forward as we create a better tomorrow than today. So I end with my gratitude where I begin. Thank you all. Thank you to the leadership of this great project. Thank you to being part of recognizing where we've been and the work that we still have to do. And with that, I will turn the program over to our senior United States Senator, Jack Reed.
Thank you very much, Gabe. One of the first lessons that one must learn in the political life is never follow Gabe Amo to the microphone. Good afternoon. This is an honor and a privilege to join you. I want to thank the Board of Directors of the Bristol Middle Passage Port Marker Project for your extraordinary work, and all the people here in Bristol and elsewhere that took part in this moment, which recognizes the suffering and the sacrifice of so many African Americans and so many indigenous Americans. Without that recognition, we tend to forget our past. And to forget history is to repeat it, and we cannot do that. I also want to recognize Spencer Evans for his great art. Long after we go, this sculpture will remind generations of Americans, will provoke thought, will provoke a sense of remorse for those who were suffered, and I hope a rededication to end such suffering in this world. This memorial reminds us that our country's past, no matter how painful, must be recognized, that the truth must be embraced, that truth is a powerful force to keep us headed in the right direction. Now, Gabe and I were just in Ghana and Liberia. We were at the center of the triangle trade from Bristol to Ghana to Cuba and other parts. And we saw the residue of that in some of the buildings and some of the people we met. But we have to recognize that we were the perpetrators of that great horror inflicted upon thousands and thousands of people. But by recognizing that, it doesn't mean simply checking a box. It means building a society in which that type of behavior will not exist. Building a society that provides opportunity, not servitude, to all of its citizens. We are committed to that. Now, Gabe touched upon this, but at the highest levels of our government, the President of the United States is trying to suggest that slavery was really a benign process that benefited slaves. That's false. We are here to reaffirm the truth that thousands suffered, some profited, but to profit off of the lives of people is wrong. And we are committed, again, to create a society which is based on opportunity, not exploitation. We are all here today to reaffirm the truth, because we know the truth shall keep thee free. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much, Senator and Congressman Gabe Amo. Next, I am going to introduce a member of our board who was kind of our secret weapon. She is a native of New York City, having received her PhD from Brown University in 2022, and she joined the faculty at Rhode Island College as Professor of History and African Studies. Her research interests include Africa and the Black Atlantic, African American history, and the enslavement in particular of African girls in the British Atlantic between the 16th and 18th century. Sherri Cummings is a historian and has just animated our board beyond anything I can say. She is the author of a book that's for sale that you will get have a chance to look at the end of our program, called Forgotten Legacies, Slavery and Remembrance in Bristol, Rhode Island. So without further ado, I'm proud to welcome our esteemed colleague, Dr. Sherri Cummings, who will introduce our next speaker. Dr. Cummings.
Thank you so much. Wow, this view from up here is amazing. I want everyone to just take a second and turn around and look at all these people here. Thank you for coming out and supporting us. We really appreciate it. So, I'm going to keep this brief because I'm afraid of this hammer that is reminding me of my time. So, there is an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. In other words, there is a power in community when achieving long-term goals. This marvelous sculptural dedication to the thousands of souls who were victims of the transatlantic slave trade and subsequent bondage in New England, the South, and the Caribbean, is a testimony to that community work. From Spencer's gifted hands, the diligence of our board members, the camaraderie with fellow organizations, and to the faith of our donors, we came together to make it happen. But the work of memory, truth-telling, and justice does not stop here. We, our community, must be unwavering, especially at a time when forces would rather see the history of Black and brown people in this country erased. It's not an easy task, but it's one that our next guest graciously takes on. He is a writer, scholar, curator, distinguished professor, and the director of the Ruth J. Simmons Center for the Study of Slavery and Justice at Brown University. He is that voice in my head, because he was my mentor. And so, he fills in the gaps for my own work and the challenges that I think about when I ask those tough questions when looking at history. And so, against the tide, and that often go against the tide of popular culture and historical erasure. So, as a community, to go far, we must be able and ready to confront those hard questions. And here to discuss the significance of this and what it means for our community today, please help me welcome Dr. Anthony Bogues.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to begin by thanking Dr. Cummings for that gracious introduction. And as she was speaking, I recalled the number of times we sat down talking about her thesis, sometimes arguing a little bit, but that I always knew that sitting in front of me was a remarkable scholar and person. So thank you very much, Dr. Cummings. I also want to thank all the board members of this project for inviting me to speak here today, and to thank Stephen and his other friends who came to see me at Brown University in my office just to speak about this project and to ask whether or not I would speak today. I had no hesitation. Stephen, as you know, I said, yes, just tell me the date and I'll make sure that I'll be here. This is an important project for Rhode Island, for the country as well. Because we are gathered here this afternoon at a moment in time in our country and in the state of Rhode Island, a moment which is auspicious. And it is auspicious for two reasons. The firstly is that we live in times when history is being standardized. We live in times in which the historical truths that we once knew or thought we knew are now being eroded before us. We live in times when there are people who want to erase history in a way that recreate a different narrative about the foundations of this country. It is not just about the closing of museums, but really it is about presenting to this country different kind of historical knowledge and a different kind of historical narrative that will frame events to come. And we have to be careful about that. Because if you forget that history, if you pay no attention to the foundations of how this country was built, then we might find ourselves making a series of mistakes which our children and our children's children may wonder, what were my parents and grandparents doing? Secondly, this is an auspicious moment because in the midst of these attempts to erase history, to rewrite the foundations of this country, we are here to celebrate. We are here to mark the unveiling of a sculpture, of a monument, in which the indigenous people, the Pokanoket people, and the African enslaved are joined together. And this is historic in many ways. It is both historic and remarkable because that joining in this monument opens new pathways for us all to see each other. And as it opens new pathways, the monument then becomes a catalyst in which we can begin to write the new histories of New England and indeed the new histories of America. Conventional historical analysis and historical scholarship generally posits that, guess what? That really the peoples who were here, the indigenous people, they disappeared somehow. It also posits that real slavery really began in this country with the African Americans. Not true. It is not true. We have to understand that the foundations of this country began with dispossession of land, began with near genocide of people. Not genocide, near genocide of people. And that racial slavery was then layered upon this near genocide and upon this dispossession. And therefore, when people say that the original sin of the United States is racial slavery, they are missing something. There are two original sins of the United States: the near genocide of the indigenous population, as well as the dispossession of the indigenous population, and then of racial slavery. We have to understand that, I think, in trying to understand who we are as a people and where we are as a nation today. In Bristol and in Rhode Island, in Newport and elsewhere, this was an epicenter of that process. This New England was not the city on the hill. This was not the city on the hill. This was the site of a certain kind of settler colonialism, first practiced by the British, and then practiced after that by the North Americans. This was a place in which freedom was not given. This was a place in which questions of liberty walked side by side with questions of domination and dispossession and slavery. You cannot think about American history. You cannot think about questions of liberty in American history without not thinking about the underside of that liberty, underside of that history. There's a man who was the governor, first governor of Rhode Island. His name is Stephen Hopkins. He wrote a very famous pamphlet, one of the most important pamphlets in American history, about the defense of self-determination. He was an owner of slaves. Now, at the end of his life, he decided to release his slaves. But what is interesting to me is that this important pamphlet, this man who signed the Declaration of Independence, writing eloquently about liberty, says that liberty is about the Americans now getting released from King George. And he doesn't talk about the slaves that he owned. And you have to ask yourself this question. Is it a kind of intellectual blindness? Or is it a kind of gymnastics? Or is it a moral question? Or is it, in fact, a way in which when we oppress people, no matter who we are, that we forget that they are human beings and therefore can do and say anything about them or neglect them? What is it? And so, to think about this question, to think about our moment, is to think about not that paradox, not the intellectual gymnastics, but to think about what kind of conditions, what kind of ways, what must go into people's thinking to create certain kind of understandings about other human beings. We have heard that this is the heart of families like the Wolf. And I want to pay tribute to Katrina Brown, who I know, Traces of the Trade, and also pay tribute to the family for recognizing the work or to recognize the historical catastrophe that their family has created. But what I think is also very important to understand is not just that there was racial slavery, but that to also understand that you can't think about racial slavery, and notice the words I'm using. You can't think about racial slavery in New England without not thinking about the indigenous people. I come from the Caribbean originally. And when you look at one of the slave laws in Barbados, you mentioned it, sir. The beginning of the slave law says this, that there are whites, it's describing the population. There are whites, there are Indians, and there are Africans. And that the heathens are the Indians and the Africans. This is about the slave law. That law becomes important and becomes a prototype for the laws in Virginia, because it is in the 1600s. And we have to remember this was all a British Atlantic space right up until 1776. And that law essentially makes it clear that there were two peoples who should be treated as non-humans. That's what the indigenous people, they called them Indians at the time, and the African slaves. And we forget that. But we forget that because we allow ourselves to be divided and conquered. We forget that because we think somehow if we don't mix with the African side, then somehow people will forget that we were indentured servants or we were slaves. And then those of us who are Africans forget that because we say to ourselves, we don't want to be mixed up with those people. I think it is clear, and I want to congratulate Spencer Evans on this, that you cannot talk about slavery, you cannot talk about dispossession, you cannot talk about freedom and liberty without not recognizing the common association between the indigenous population and the African population. And I repeat again, that therefore the two original sins are dispossession, near genocide, and racial slavery. In preparing for this brief remarks, I went online to look at a library that's close to us. It's called the Redwood Library in Newport. And I looked at it and I read what it said about itself. And then I went back to my Caribbean history and I tried to find out who was the owner of an estate called the Cassandra Plantations in Antigua. And that man turned out to be Abraham Redwood. But the library online does not talk about that. It is a moment of erasure. It is a smooth history about somebody who made a lot of money in the West Indies and that became a major philanthropist and then set up the first Athenaeum and library in these United States. The forgetting and the erasure of history is a dangerous thing. Not that because if we forget it and erase it, we will repeat it. That we might do. But importantly, when you forget it and erase history, you cannot live in peace. The question of peace, the question of liberty, the question of happiness, all these things are related, and James Baldwin made it clear, to the question of history. Because history is not about the past. History is about the present. It's about how that past has shaped this present. And if we want to confront the present, if we want to live truly in liberty or in freedom, if we want to understand the relationship between sovereignty and freedom, then we have to think through about how and work with how we think about history. It would seem to me that as we recognize this past, we recognize the past I'm speaking about not to mourn. We do not mourn because our ancestors are with us today. They have given us strength, not to cry, not to bewail, but strength to confront, strength to organize ourselves, strength to try and think about repair and what that might mean, strength to think about repair as reparative justice. Because when we think about healing, it is not just healing. Healing without justice means nothing. You can't just heal. This is not just a body, a cut on the body. This is a wound on the soul, on the wound of who we are as a people. And we as a people will live in a society. And therefore, if you are going to heal, you have to heal and think about what are the things that we're healing about. Not to close over, but to open up new passages that create justice and have new relationships between us as people. And so when we look at this particular monument and we think about our ancestors, we think about confrontation. I'm not talking about physical confrontation. I'm talking about, we think, confrontation of the truth and what that truth means. And then we are also think about this. How are we going to deal with a situation in which there are attempts to erase? I want to end with this. This republic, founded as an experiment, has not lived up to its expectations. It's has not lived up to its expectations because of its original sins. But it does not mean that it cannot live up to that expectation. But to live up to that expectation demands us to confront our history, demands us to think about reparative justice, demands of us to make sure that no one, absolutely no one, black, white, brown, Chinese, or whatever, will ever be dominated or exploited in this country. And therefore, those who think that somehow we can be great again without ignoring, by ignoring that history, make a fundamental mistake. Because as sure as the sun follows the night, our ancestors will help us to try and make freedom, and not just a freedom for a few, but a freedom for all. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Those very important words for everyone to take away. So now we've come to the main event. And it's my great honor and privilege to introduce to you the artist who created the monument memorial that we have in front of us, and he will also supervise the unveiling of it. Spencer Evans, Professor Spencer Evans, was born in Houston, Texas, and earned his bachelor's in fine arts in drawing and painting from the University of Missouri, and his master's in fine arts, which is a terminal degree in that field, from the University of Texas at Arlington. He is a figurative painter and sculptor who is professor at Rhode Island School of Design. He makes his home in Providence, and his studio is in Pawtucket. He is also a husband and partner to Llerena, who is sitting next to him, and father to Aziza, who is still sort of with her uncle, I'm told, and is kind of bored by this whole affair. Much of Spencer's work is based in history and telling stories. He regards black expression as a heroic form of communication from one generation to the next, as it has existed despite violent opposition since his ancestors were first brought to the American shores. He's a very proud African-American descendant of slaves, and you see that in his work. Bristol Middle Passage commissioned this brilliant artist to create the sculpture, which we call the Bristol Memorial, as it lives today and will continue for all time. As I said, we had a competition. He won the competition, and we're very happy that he did that. His sensitivity toward history and culture, particularly his regard and care toward the indigenous people who were here long before any of us, really struck the members of the board very deeply. I remember the night that we selected his model. Many of the board members cried. We saw grown men crying because of the power of the sculpture. Our enthusiasm in choosing this artist has only been reaffirmed and strengthened in the many months of execution, from the models to the full-scale masterpiece that will live in our community forever. So, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, on behalf of the board of the Bristol Middle Passage Port Marker Project, we proudly introduce to you the artist Spencer Evans.
Thank you all. I appreciate that. Beautiful. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, now I come from a culture of call and response, so we're gonna have to run that back. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, I like that. All right, my wife Layla and I have been in Rhode Island for 6 years now, but I still have not forgotten my southern roots. So before I start my remarks, I have to give honor and give thanks to a few people. So starting off, I have to give honor to my God and my ancestors for giving me the opportunity, inspiration, guidance, strength, and stamina to design, build, and sculpt these three figures during the first 3 sleep-deprived months of my baby's life. Parents out here know what I'm talking about. Yeah. I have to give honor and thanks to my wife, Layla. Girl, you inspired me to be better every day, and you selflessly allowed me to split a huge chunk of my time between home and the studio in the first phase of this project, and that really meant a lot to me. And you understand me, and that's everything. You know what I mean? I have to thank my daughter Aziza, right there, for inspiring me to envision a world that I want her to grow up in. And she also inspires me to figure out what is my role and what is my lane and how can I do what I can to create that world for her. So. We're gonna talk about this in a few years. I bring up that time, that phase last summer because it was kind of a rough time. So the idea of this happening in that time was really important, and we didn't do that on our own. So I have to thank mine and Layla's parents, my sister-in-law Noelle, our PVD village, our friends will become family, who really leaned in towards those early months so that we had, support in a time that I don't know if we'd have been able to get this far in the first phase without help. So thank y'all. I love y'all so much. I want to thank my siblings, my brothers and my sisters. They constantly inspired me to see my people for the absolute beings of wonder that they are by reflecting that wonder every day in their different fields. I love y'all so much. Y'all inspire me. I'm always trying to make y'all proud. 2 of my brothers are here from Texas. There's one right there, and the other one is holding my daughter. So I have to thank the board, the advisors, the search committee. A huge thanks to Boccaccio Sculpture and Warren Monuments for the way that they work with me closely and personally with getting these sculptures to the point that I was happy with, and even all the way down to making sure that things were lined up correctly all the way down to last week. So that was something that meant a lot, being able to work with those folks up close. Big thanks to Tony Whedon and my good brother John DeCruz for serving as the visual references for the adult figures in the monument. You all will see them soon. I have to thank Sachem, Tracey Dancing Star, and Sagamore Winds of Thunder, and Brother Keith Stokes for sitting down with me to talk about the history of the Pokanoket and African ancestors who are going to be depicted in this monument. Something that these wouldn't be what they are without that conversation and without y'all's consideration and time that y'all gave me. And so I really appreciate that. I don't take that for granted at all. So thank you all for that. Yes, indeed. All right, so in the spirit of monumentalism, which answered the question that's asked from one generation to the next, whose stories get to stand the test of time? I want to talk about what the ancestors of this land and the ones forced to build its wealth have passed on to their descendants by asking another question. What gifts have the ancestors given us? We could be here all day listing how their contributions transcend space and time, so I'm going to mention a few of the attributes that inspired me while I was in the sculpting phase of this monument. A few of the attributes that I want our children to recognize in themselves when they think of the ones who came before them. So we're going to take a little time and I'm going to love on our ancestors a little bit. I'm going to love on our people. Is that all right? Yes. All right. What gifts have the ancestors given us? Since their creation and evolution, the ancestors have lived in harmony with the wonders of this planet. The way light holds hands with the moisture in our skin as it soaks into our melanin, reflecting an oscillating spectrum of hues from our bodies is evidence that they were loved by the sun, moon, and the stars. The ancestors communicated with the earth, rivers, and ocean, forming relationships with every living thing around them and their habits throughout the seasons. And they bring their generational knowledge and instincts with them as they guide us through times when pieces of history begin to repeat themselves. Through their relationship with the land, they taught us that there are enough resources for everyone, and that life in this world is sweeter when we regard each person in the community as family. This consideration lives in us through the way we're innately drawn to each other and heightened by the way our souls dance when we come together. Furthermore, the richness of these resources that developed beneath the feet of our ancestors here in Solon and on the mother continent currently shines in our spirit and reverberates from every way we express ourselves today. We still look like them. We still sound like them. We can hear the joy our ancestors carved out for themselves during a time of intense sorrow echoing in our laughter. The collective syncopated percussion of our hands paired with the rhythmic harmonies of our voices mirror the healing sounds of this earth and its spirit long before they were monetized by those who couldn't begin to understand our melodies. The ancestors remembered the songs and verbal histories that the oppressor foolishly believed they had forgotten because they were punished for even saying the word Pokanoket or even uttering their own Akan names. However, those songs and histories are still being sung and told right now. We still sound like them. Despite having their mother tongues taken away from them, the ancestors gifted us their innovative ways of creating regionally specific dialects that shift every generation to communicate and organize amongst each other through the trappings of a forced colonial language. It's because of the ancestors that some of you can probably hear exactly what region I'm from and understand what I'm asking when I say, no, I'm talking about you feel me. We still sound like them. We still heal each other like they did. It's not by accident that we still know which herbs and natural combinations serve as the remedies that will cure our ailments. It's not by accident that we have the ability to heal each other's souls from the love felt within a home-cooked meal that was prepared without any precise measurements. It's not by accident that the ingredients that were once seen as cheap, left over or discarded are now overpriced delicacies after the ancestors imbued their magic into places that others didn't know existed. Oysters cost too much, y'all. Oxtails definitely cost too much, y'all. This is because our ancestors gifted us with the ability to transform any hardship into elegance. We still look like them. Despite constant attempts to erase the ancestors' culture and identity, their beautifully flavorful style and grace is on full display through us, right now, on the very land that those attempts were made. Hair that flows and falls with texture, holds when braided, curls and coils when wet, waves when brushed, locks into place when twisted, absorbing sunlight, defying gravity in its natural state, and styled in 100 different ways. Every shade of earth-toned skin from beige to midnight value, demonstrating the creator's love of variety. We look like them. Masterfully crafted leatherwork, wampum, vibrant colors, and West African patterns dance under the sunlight as a tribute to the ancestors' undying spirit. Every time we dress like this, they get to walk this earth again. upright, exuding freedom in every movement. We look like them. So in this monument, our children won't see another painful, long-standing image of their ancestors being driven from their home. They'll see the unbreakable spirit of the Pokanoket people. They'll see the unbreakable spirit and that unbreakable connection that they have with this land, mirrored by their living descendants with every visit to this site, every ceremonial gathering, community festival, and tribal meeting. They will see that every effort to erase these people has failed gloriously because the name Pokanoket rings loudly on this land today. If you don't see your ancestors in this monument, that's all right. You're invited to see these people as your neighbors. You're invited to form and cultivate a relationship with them every time you visit or pass this site. You're invited to scan the QR code and learn more about your neighbor and the winding history they have with this land. In this monument, our children won't see another painful, long-standing image of their ancestors who were taken from their home and trafficked to another continent to begin a life of dehumanizing subjugation and labor and bondage. They will see the unbreakable spirit of the people who heroically drew strength from each other, the ancient spirits and the Creator, to hold on just a little while longer instead of giving into hopelessness, so that their descendants could be here right now living out their dreams that they spoke into existence in the way that we love, in the way that we laugh, in the way we create and innovate. They held on a little while longer so that little boys, little girls, and two-spirited children who look and sound like them could move through this world with freedom in their hearts, thriving, knowing that they will never enter any rooms alone. If you don't see your ancestors in this monument, you're invited to see these people as your neighbors. You're invited to form and cultivate a relationship with them every time you visit or pass this site. You're invited to scan the QR code and learn more about your neighbors and their winding history with this land. I'm going to keep it real with you. Our children won't see chains here. They won't see the destruction of their people here. The spirit of despair is not in this monument. Given the idea that chains, destruction, and despair weren't the creations of our ancestors, it isn't the intent for this monument to pass that on to us. Instead, strength is here. Knowledge of self is here. Love is here. Hope and affirmations that a better future will come to pass are right here. And bringing our ancestors with us into that future is our gift back to them. So as I close, it's important to think about the type of ancestors we will be. We've heard it a few times today. We're obviously living in a wild era. There's constant and overt attempts to erase important pieces of this country's history, as well as the people connected to it. However, it's important to recognize that instead of moving in fear, denial, or apathy, and accepting the current trend of regression, the town of Bristol, everyone here, and anyone who had anything to do with this project is righteously participating in memorializing and remembering an important part of history for the benefit of our society. I also must recognize that public art is just a piece of the mission towards reconciliation and liberation. A monument like this one is meant to serve as a beacon, a reference, or a story amongst the myriad of stories that help us to know the truth about the lives lived on this planet and the contributions and experiences of every group of human beings inhabiting it. So as far as public art goes, we want our descendants to look at this monument and be proud that their ancestors came together to preserve an important piece of history during a time when it would have been easier to just keep our heads down and wait out the storm. And in the near or distant future, hopefully our souls will be with our descendants to offer them guidance on how to take that first step in the right direction when immense difficulties come to find them. Because sometimes that first step is the hardest one. We have more work to do, but in the meantime, join me in telling the ancestors of this land, welcome home. Peace and blessings. Thank y'all.
Dr. Evans, could you then do us the honor of moving over to the monument and so we can unveil it? Please do not crowd the space. Stay where you are. But the first thing we'll do is to unveil this sculpture. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Unveil, please.